Welcome back to Simandhar Education. So after a series of various lectures of leadership going on, so we are glad to have Bhavani amongst us. And I think I've been with Infosys, so I was an Infosys alumni. So just can share some of the things about Infosys being very good in the corporate governance and all. And so audit should be one of the powerful function of Infosys. And I think none other than Bhavani be the right person to kind of talk about the audit function. Just to note, guys, a lot of them thinks that you need a chartered accountancy to represent an audit function. But then we have a person who is not a chartered accountant but still have other qualifications and have gone up the corporate ladder. And we are so glad to have Bhavani here with us. And the next 1.5 hours would be with Bhavani. And I request everyone to be interactive and ask questions, raise your hands, and we could take it up accordingly. And once again, welcome Bhavani. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor and delight to welcome Ms. Bhavani Jois amongst us. Bhavani ma'am is a high-performing risk and assurance professional and currently the head of Internal Audit and SOX of Infosys Limited. She has a demonstrable record of achievement in formulating and implementing integrated approaches to governance, risk, and internal controls, as well as measurement and improvement within large private sector and not-for-profit organizations. MAM combines high levels of commercial acuity and systems knowledge with advanced planning capabilities, analyzing strategic priorities, and delivering precise value-added solutions. She is a resourceful and politically astute individual offering strong business leadership and exceptional influencing skills at C-level and across multidisciplinary, local, and global terms. That was a brief description of Bhavani ma'am. In case of any queries, you can either type in the same in the text box provided, or you can even raise your hands. We'll unmute you and you can put forth your question.
Thanks, Aishwarya, and welcome everyone to this webinar. And thank you for making time at somewhat lunch hour on a Saturday. I'm thankful to Simandhar for having me on this webinar and also for accommodating my request for this slot. Unfortunately, with school starting next week, I have some other commitments with my kids' schools this afternoon. So without further ado, let me begin on this topic, the future of audit, a practical view. I'll just move slides. So, I have jotted down here a few things I think I'd like to cover. Shripal told me that most of you would be in your early stages of your career, probably pursuing CIA or thinking about it. So I've tailored this presentation to suit that audience. So if apologies in advance if there are any advanced people on this call who may find this a little elementary, but I think I've put here what I would have wished somebody told me when I was starting my career. So this is my point of view as to what somebody who really needs to make a mark in their internal audit career needs to think about. So the first piece is around the evolution of audit and what the future looks like. And then I also have talked about what are the skills that a CAE is looking for. I mean, I've been a CAE for almost 15 years now, and we still often struggle to find the right kind of person. And it's a combination of what they can deliver in an interview and what they put on their CV. And what they put on their CV is very important to get them through the first filtering process. So and then of course then the proof is in the pudding when they actually execute and successfully deliver and make an impression. But it's important to have a CV that really calls out and wants somebody to at least meet with you and talk to you, right? So that's very important. Then I talk about data analytics. Now, the evolution of internal audit is so vast that today there is no longer disciplines. I would say there's no extensive discipline or branches of nicheness in internal audit. It's very important to be multi-capable, multifaceted, techno-functional, all those buzzwords. It's actually really important. No longer can you call somebody an IT auditor or a process auditor or analytics specialist. While such disciplines exist in very large organizations, most of us start out in smaller organizations and you must do everything. So it's very important to understand the role of data analytics, which is one of the starting stages of actual evolution in internal audit. Then from being in a position of somebody who has themselves struggled to really figure out how to start. I mean, this word seems so advanced and confusing, and nobody really knows where to begin and what's good enough. And will I make an impression, or will I be called out to be somebody who is, not authentic when I'm coming to claim my data analytics capabilities? It's important to break down what data analytics really is into its component parts, and really see how much of it is really purely technical, and how much how much of it is pragmatic business knowledge and capability to think analytically and convert problems into statements for solution. So a practical approach to that. Then the world has so much to offer in terms of analytical tools and learning resources. So I spend a few slides here on really giving you at least for my basic knowledge and understanding on my basic research, what are the tools and resources available for you to start your analytical journey straight away. Even if your role currently doesn't offer you that opportunity, you don't have to wait. There's enough and plenty out there for you to make a start. And then I move on to a very, very essential part, something I'm extremely passionate about, which is around communication skills and the need to establish yourself as a trusted advisor, because internal auditors have to interact with almost every dimension of the organization. You can't no longer can you reserve the relationship with the senior process owners, the AVPs, the title holders, just to your CAEs and your directors of internal audit. Everybody in the organization is your stakeholder. As a young internal auditor starting your profession, you should be comfortable in communicating, influencing, and building your own personality as a trusted advisor to some very senior individuals. That's the only way you're going to get ahead in life, because a lot of what a traditional internal auditor used to do is now being done by machines, by computers. So we are not redundant, but we need to evolve. And communication, and I'll come to explaining why a lot of these aspects which are softer are becoming extremely essential for us to master younger. Right, those who have mastered the language of English in a country like India and the European American countries, the African countries have really used the language command, for example, to spearhead their career. And likewise, in countries where the business language is their local language, your confidence in speaking, in communicating, both verbally and through body language, etc., is extremely important for somebody to trust you and believe you. And only when I trust you will I actually listen to what you have to say. And then the last part is around the CIA qualification. I am part of the Institute of Internal Auditors of India. I'm a CIA myself, and I just want to give you a few points of thought as to why the CIA qualification is really important, both on your CV and also to help you fast track your business acumen. Because those days people used to learn on the job. Unfortunately, now with analytics and things like agile auditing, where you only do part of the audit and not the entire audit, you may not always be in a job which gives you the entire end-to-end picture of a process, or any process for that matter, or the business as a whole. And no internal auditor is fully capable unless he truly understands the end-to-end dimensions of the process he's auditing and the organization and the industry knowledge. So the CIA qualification, thankfully, has evolved over time. I took mine into it. I mean, I was one of those people who learned on the job. To be honest, I did not take my CIA until I was already a head of audit. So when I took up my CIA, it was 2013, which I had already been a head of audit for 5-6 years by that time. But I just felt it was important for my authenticity to do a qualification that reflected my profession. And I think those of you who are looking to make a real start at your career, a real good go of your career in internal audit, you need to think of a qualification that gives you the vastest depth of business processes and business acumen that you can gather. So with that, I'll just move on. The future of internal audit. This is by the way, just for your information, on every slide, and I think I will be able to share this later with you, I have put links to the source from which I have obtained my own research. So while the slide contains very little, every single slide more or less has a link to something which you can go, and I strongly encourage you to read so that you really understand the breadth of what information is being put out there in the web on various topics. So to begin with, the future of internal audit, as per a survey done by KPMG China, interestingly enough, I found most relevant to capture what is important for an internal audit department to consider for maximizing its impact. So this says that these 10 things are extremely important for an audit function to consider. And it starts with the top 4 of intelligent automation, data analytics and insights, technology transformation, and cybersecurity. And I think you can see a trend there that basically says technology, complete embracing of technology is essential for any internal audit function to really make impact. And then it goes on further to talk about things like compliance and regulation, which today is everywhere and in everything, right? Then the concept of distributed enterprise. Today, especially the COVID-19 situation has really taught us how distributed enterprises can be with outsourcing and double outsourcing and subcontracting and so on and so forth. So how do you get assurance of such a distributed enterprise, supply chain coming from all directions? Culture risk, extremely important, because today all the fiascos that have happened, a company's culture is extremely important for it to really sustain its reputation and to take those hits that come, those hits that impact your reputation will come. I mean, there is no organization that is exempt from having a reputational hit, but the culture element of an organization really is that pillow or that cushion. When you fall, it helps you bounce back again. So it's extremely important. Corporate responsibility, the COVID-19 situation once again taught us the importance of corporate responsibility, and companies that really put this in their top agenda are companies that are respected by shareholders. So internal auditors need to play a part there. Today, with the amount of protectionism and sanctions, today the world is completely convergent. There's data everywhere, and things, sanctions on countries or companies affect in one geography, affect companies in another geography. It's very important to understand that and protect the organization. And lastly, workforce demographics is extremely important, because today, again, the COVID-19 situation has taught us the fact that people can work from anywhere and be as impactful as if they were in the office. So today your workforce, and it's going to, and this event that we're experiencing now is going to completely change the demographics of how the internal audit workforce will look like in the future. No longer will your colleagues be next to you, for sure. I mean, even if companies return to normal and go back to the offices, it will never be with the same kind of dimension. So with this list, I just wanted to take the top 4, or at least the top 3, as the theme for my presentation, to talk about some of the really important elements that a young internal auditor needs to think about, and how do you make a start, even though your current role may not give you the opportunity. So moving on from there, are you an internal audit rock star, right? Basically, if your CV somewhere can talk about data analytics, intelligent automation, technology transformation, or even if you can package or repackage your experiences to touch on these things, believe me, you automatically either earn a premium value, or in today's climate where people are not hiring in as much numbers, you will be the one that they want to pick amongst the many, right? So any head of audit I speak to today tells me that it's extremely difficult to find the right kind of profile, and they've almost now resorted to to recruiting for attitude and training on the job. But imagine if you can come forward with the attitude that's already there, the great, hardworking, diligent, enthusiastic attitude, but also have a CV that shows that you have something different to offer. Your premium value, the better assignments, and the fact that you will be heard, right? In large internal audit functions, it's often difficult to make impact straight away. So those who have, something an X factor to offer, certainly we make that will make that impression. So with this kind of background, my next slide talks about the actual skills the CAE wants. Right. So this is actually based on a survey that was done a few years ago, but I think it is as relevant today as it was then. It was part of, so CBOC is the I can't stand, I remember what C stands for, but book of knowledge. So the Internal Audit book of knowledge, part of the IIA, does certain surveys on various themes. And one of the themes was what skills do CAE want? If you can see here, it's very interesting. The top two skills that the CAEs have identified is not a technical skill. They have identified analytical thinking, not data analytics, which comes further down. It is analytical thinking, critical thinking, and communication as the top two skills that internal auditors want. And as a hiring head of audit, I echo this point of view that we can teach technical capabilities to people, but critical and analytical thinking and communication can be taught, but not as easily, right? So extremely important. But then it goes further to talk about accounting, risk management, information technology, and industry specific knowledge, followed by data mining. And there's a reason for this, and I just want to kind of, I've got a few bullet points here. First, people skills are a priority over technical skills, right? So I would like you all to just ponder on that and think about how are you ranking against this statement that people skills are a priority over technical skills. Then analytical thinking is key to driving data analytics and intelligent transformation. It is not data analytics that is driving your extra value or your increased value proposition. It is your analytical thinking that is actually driving data analytics. So it's a very, very important second statement, and this is and there is a reason why these two have come up top. Third, communication is key to transforming output of any analytics, transformation, intelligent automation, any output. Communication is key to transform output into action. If there is no action, then there is no outcome. Output is just a product of a process. Outcomes for the organization is measured by action. So there is a key skill required between the data analytics phase and your outcome to the organization, the value impact, which is communication and convincing your stakeholders to take action. So here is another very important component. Now comes the fourth part: accounting, risk management, IT, industry knowledge, and business acumen is key to spotting relationships in data and making sense of them. So while analytical thinking is critical to driving data analytics, how you apply your analytical thinking, the more accounting knowledge, risk management knowledge, IT, industry, business acumen you have, the richer will be your analytical thinking. Right. So there are people who would go through the kind of, bucking through the exams and passing everything, studying from the book and memorizing. And they may get some accounting or risk management or industry knowledge from that process. But they find it hard to apply that knowledge into analytical and critical thinking. Right. It's very important to understand often our exams are not always designed to test analytical thinking. They're often designed to test memory, which is not the right thing and not needed today with Google on your mobile phone. Or you don't need memory is there at the fingertips. Somebody else is memorizing it for you, and that's in the form of a machine. What you need is application, and that is why analytical thinking is on top and technical knowledge comes later. And finally comes data mining and analytical skills, which is basically needed to execute the analytics that the analytical thinker has thought about using their business acumen, the accounting, risk management knowledge. They've come up with some hypotheses, and now I need data mining or analytical skills to actually execute the analytics. I just want you guys to process this priority bit, because this is the real life, right? While people throw buzzwords like data analytics and RPA around, what is extremely important ingredient of these capabilities is not the technical part itself. It is a lot of pre-planning, pre-thinking, precursor to executing analytics is the analytical thinking, bringing the business knowledge together with the thinking, and really coming out with that big problem question that this is what I want to solve from data analytics. Once you know what you want to solve from data analytics, there are enough and more technical people. Of course, you can choose to be a technical person who runs a tool and sits in the back office and codes SQL queries. That's absolutely fine. But there are people to do that. What we need as internal auditors are less people to do the coding and the SQL querying, but more the people who can think analytically and come up with the problem statement that we want to solve. And a bit more in my presentation, I'll be talking about some of the approaches you can do to make a start at this, and some of the challenges that people who have made a start are finding in trying to do a data analytics. So I'll move on to the next key point. What is data analytics, and what are the kinds of what are the kinds of questions that we need to be answering in a rich and comprehensive and complete manner across the whole data set for us to really bring value, right? I don't need to read that out to you. It's pretty straightforward what data analytics is. But for me, what's really important is this who, what, why, when, where, how, right? When I review work papers of my team members, when I review the RCMs, these, and all my review comments center around these 6 questions again and again and again. And somehow and somewhere people forget to ask one of these 6 questions. But it's not enough if to kind of do it by inquiry, right? It's not enough to ask the process owner who, what, why, when, and where, and how. Data analytics, bringing relationships between these 6 dimensions through data analytics is where you really get richness of insight, right? So data analytics to the largest extent is really understanding, analytically thinking about the interplay and the relationships between these 6 variables. So why is data analytics indispensable for internal audit, especially in today's day and age, right? Now there are many stakeholders. The company that is obviously hiring you or funding the IA function expects increased audit coverage, and increased audit coverage the traditional way requires more labor, and that's not possible. So data analytics plays a huge role in increased audit coverage. Now quality and business impact, right? The less error rate or the no error rate of a good set of data analytics means quality is almost assured in that process. And because of the vast coverage, or the 100% coverage of the population, there's no room for unassured. There's no unassured element in a assurance given to the organization. So the business impact is also much higher, and it can be done for a much lesser budget. So an investment in 3 or 4 real hardcore auditors who can think analytically, come up with the problem statement, and tell the guy in the back office IT guy, please code this into SQL for me to give me this insight, is I'd rather pay that analytical thinking guy a lot more, that person a lot more, than to hire 5 or 6 average auditors. So this is so critical for the future of how lean audit functions are going to operate. And those who are already in role in internal audit, and likewise for my team, we are going through the journey of retraining and practicing, spending extra hours in the evenings, in the weekends, learning and trying out, sharing our mistakes so that we can help each other to make this an integral part of our skill set. Then, of course, the other big dimension is compliance. Compliance assurance on compliance cannot be on sample. It has to be comprehensive. There is no room. There is zero tolerance to non-compliance. So how on earth can we, give assurance on compliance using anything but analytics? It has to be through analytics, and it has to be comprehensive. Then comes the business owner and process owner. Remembering here that our stakeholders in the organization are already on an analytical journey, a RPA journey, automation journey, an AI journey. They're already on a journey, and in fact, auditors are catching up. Right? We are not leading the way here. They are leading the way. We are catching up. So we can't have deep insights conversations with our stakeholders if we don't mirror the kind of analytics they're already doing. Right? If there's RPA in the business, then we should be able to audit RPA and use RPA ourselves. If there's analytics in the business, we should be able to do the same. So most companies today, it's already there. The front line, the first line of defense, to some extent the second line, they're already using analytics and RPA. So we can't not have it if you want to be seen as credible business partners, advisors, etc. And where internal auditors are slightly more capable and the business is perhaps lagging or struggling a little bit, another real win-win outcome is where internal auditors build analytics and then they hand it back to the business. So I've seen many a times where, say, your time and material. So, for example, your travel expenses analysis. Somewhere the travel team is still struggling; they're unable to build the analytics themselves. But there's so much volume. Internal auditor comes along. It's a low-hanging fruit. He builds the analytics. He runs it for 1 or 2 months. He says, "Here, I think this is good enough. You can spot your, outliers here. You can spot your typical fraudulent claims through this method. And here, I'm handing it back to you, business, because you can now run it and self-assure, and I'll come and check that. I'll come and check as an auditor that that process is working. Absolute win-win for the business, absolute win-win for your relationship, and so on and so forth. And lastly, of course, if an IA function isn't embracing analytics, nobody wants to work for them anymore. So here is another big challenge for the audit functions. While on one hand, I'm struggling to recruit people with analytics capabilities, unless I, as a as a audit, as somebody running an audit team, start investing in analytic capability, I actually have nothing to offer the person coming in. And nowadays when I interview people, people are saying, will I get to do I know I'm a process auditor, but I want to do IT. Will I get to do IT as part of my role? Will I get to do analytics as part of my role? Will I get to at least experiment with RP as part of my role? Those are prerequisite questions back to the hiring company, not the other way around, where people are expecting that the jobs they take up actually offer them these opportunities, because that is the only way you're going to differentiate yourselves from the rest of the pack. So here is another critical example. And then I just thought I'll spend a few minutes talking about the statement called deeper insights, right? So this statement here called deeper insights, it's deeper insights comes from how you report your observations back to the management, right? Now I just wanted to give you an illustration of just imagining doing any of these aspects of duplicate payments, unapproved purchases, payments for items not received, any of these, if we were to do them on a sample basis, which was the case, right? Which in fact still is the case in many organizations. Just imagine the huge elephant left on the table, which no one addresses, because you couldn't possibly give assurance on something like this without analytics. And I've put these five C's. I don't know whether you guys have come across these five C's. Those who have studied, are doing their CIA would probably have. When you write an audit observation, right, these five C's are a must component of any audit observation. And I just wanted to give you a relationship between data analytics and these five C's. So, for example, the criteria. Let's just take, for example, payments for items not received. Right, the criteria is not dependent. Criteria is some policy that says we will not pay for items which we have not received. Right, simple. That's the criteria that the auditor is auditing against the criteria. Now, condition is basically, what did I see? The auditor has to say, this was the condition of the process when I audited it. I found, right, now I have to say, for all transactions, for all purchases made in the last 6 months, there were 377 payments for which were made for items not received. That is the kind of statement that the audit committee is expecting. Not, I picked sample of 60 and I found 15 where there was a gap. It is for all transactions that in this category for the last 6 months, 371 where we have found evidences of payment was made for item not received. Now, is that enough to determine the cause for why this has happened, right? So here we have a three-way match. There's a GRN process. So therefore, if somebody is doing a GRN for items received, how is it possible the items were not actually received? Why is there a gap in this process? So then you look, so your initial observation or condition is not enough to determine cause. Now you need to go deeper. Now, what is the pattern here? Is it perhaps something that is happening for a particular set of approvers, right? So you need to then go one step further and say, who are the approvers of these GRNs, right? Is there a pattern? Now you can't do that in a sample basis. You need to do it for the full population. So is there a pattern? And you say, okay, no, there is actually no real pattern because all of them are senior people, etc., etc. So no problem. So all the GRN approvers seem to be correct. Now you look at who was the creator of the GRN in conjunction with the approver. Is there a pattern of collusion between two people, right? Now you need to look at another level. Now you see a pattern that for a large number of the 371, while there was no pattern in just the approver, there's a pattern now between the person who created the GRN and the approver. So here comes, so then it's, then is it heading towards fraud or is it heading towards a process gap? So just to illustrate why you can't write a good observation without analytics, because you can't possibly get the condition complete, you can't get the cause right. And of course, what is the consequence? Any board member will ask you, so what? Any head of a process will say, so what, right? So you have to look at what is the consequence, right? Was there an impact that because I have marked items received but not received, my store has the items were not in store, and it had an impact on my ability to manufacture and therefore fulfill orders. I have to go all the way to see the impact between somebody fraudulently perhaps confirming receipt of goods and the impact on my supply chain, my fulfillment, order fulfillment. Only then will there be a real, oh my God, moment for the senior folks and say, now the consequence is extremely serious and we have to take this. So I'm just trying to illustrate to you that your deeper insights can only come from analytics and more advanced analytics, and never ever from the traditional aspects of sample auditing. So I hope that kind of illustrated the point for you. I'm just going to touch slightly on RPA because I think that's another important element to think about, but I won't spend too long on it because I think I'll be giving you a lot of resources for you to read up on this. But I have been part of one or two small RPA journeys, and I can just give you my experience of that as well. But to a large extent, where data analytics can really help you on single dimension and multi-dimensional data sets, right? You can correlate, you can do a simple correlation between who approved, whether the maker and the checker was the same, can be done through analytics. But you can also combine 6 or 7 data sets to really weave a bigger story as to whether something underhanded or some kind of misbehavior is happening in the organization, of there's an ethics violation, by comparing multiple data sets. RPA is not like that. RPA is very single dimensional. It's really where you can maximize on efficiency. Right now, RPA is the beginning of an AI journey. So while I say RPA is not capable of doing extremely advanced things, fundamental RPA is very routine. But automation with machine learning gives you this concept of the nirvana of AI, which basically means the machine's learning itself. Right, so you have to do a lot of natural language programming and neural networks, which is far beyond, I would say, the average auditor's capability to do or understand where the journey is heading. And I think internal auditors will eventually go there, and some have already started. But let me give you the beginning stage, right? And this is where, if you're entering the audit profession or you're there 2-3 years into the profession, you can play a big part in the early part of RPA to begin. Basically, anything that is routine and rule-based and structured and repeatable and standardized, which is maybe high volume, prone to error if done manually. These are the classic candidates for RPA, right? Robotics process automation. So this is just an example of a few things that this is extremely long, but this is a few things that companies have started to do in RPA, and therefore, or internal audit, I put a box there for internal audit down here, because this is also where internal auditors can start thinking of using RPA. So for example, I know I'll speak from Infosys perspective, invoice processing for customers, right? There are complex invoices and there are simple invoices. A simple invoice is where whatever order, whatever project we had to deliver, it's a very linear. We've delivered the project, somebody's confirmed it's delivered, I have to bill. It's very simple. Those things are classic targets for RPA. So there's a bot that go overnight, basically runs for all cases of straightforward direct billing to customers. By the morning, all the invoices are ready for review and approval. The invoice has been generated by a bot. If it's complicated, if multiple dimensions, basically the bot doesn't do it. It waits for a human to come in the morning and do it. So that's one classic case where RPA works. For example, bank reconciliations, right? Having a bot basically look at matching the common criteria that you do to look at clearing of bank reconciliations. That's another classic candidate for RPA. For example, software installations. Today, our IT function basically doesn't have to The IT guy doesn't need to do anything. There are particular criteria. If the software meets the criteria and the person requesting it, it automatically self-installs. Otherwise, it says, please contact your IT help desk for support. For example, in Internal Audit, where have we used it? So companies that have a lot of bespoke, even SAP for that, I mean, even standard ERPs for that matter, but I'll talk from a bespoke application perspective. We have, for example, in Infosys, there are close to 100 applications that are that contain some part of financial data which is relevant for SOX and ICFR purposes. Now, how do you test all of those applications, right? Imagine sitting there going through screen by screen with the IT guy saying, please open the quality system, let me see your screen, let me do a system walkthrough, let me do a black box testing, let me take a dummy data and sample. It is extremely time consuming. Then suddenly the server is down and the server can't, and your planned work can't happen. And today with work from home, even more difficult, your VPN is down and so on and so forth. So what we have done, for example, is we have created using RPA basically for established applications which we routinely use. We have basically scripted the machine to run the test by itself. So it's like the machine runs a set of scripts to say, it mimics a user. It says this should be, let's log in as a manager. It says, okay, go to the HR master, pick a manager, try logging in with that manager's credentials. It should throw an error. It throws an error, test successful. Now move in, pick a correct person, log in. It has gone through, wonderful, test successful. Let's go on to the next stage. Can they raise a request? Yes, successful. Can they approve their own request? It should fail. Yes, it has failed, successful. So like that, we have basically automated the testing of system controls where we are depending on those controls to be working for control purposes or for SOX or ICFR purposes. So that's a classic example where RPA can be used in internal audit. The other way RPA can be used, which I know many companies have used it, is basically to look at continuous control monitoring, right? So for example, it is basically saying, I want to check that the maker and checker are not the same, and I don't want to have to do analytics for it. I want the machine to automatically go check this, check that, throw me a report, throw me an output, and that output should come to me on an email with only the exceptions, and I will then review and say sign off or whatever. You can program your bots to basically do routine tests for you, and the output will be something on a dashboard or an email. There's no need to run analytics because you've basically taken that simple analytics and made it into a bot. So these are some of the usages of RPA. Further in my slides, I'll give you some examples of RPA tools which are at your fingertips, and many of these tools have online training programs for people. So you can go and download a trial version. They have training available. You can self-learn and become far more competent than you are now if you're not yet part of the RPA journey. So I just wanted to call out some of the challenges though. I mean, it's not all smooth sailing, right? It's not that easy. And I think here's another role where internal auditors can certainly play a part in helping the organization on its RPA journey, on its data transformation RPA journey, right? First and foremost is this lack of technical resources. I believe it's not necessary. I mean, companies of course need to invest in their people, but I think all of us in auditors can certainly self-learn and self-study and become partially competent at least by investing some of our time in this, because we're not doing it for the company, we're doing it for ourselves, right? The investment you make on yourselves is not the company benefits from it, of course, but it's an investment in yourself. I remember one of the former presidents of US Inc. Global, Larry Harrington, now is no longer the president, but was a very successful head of audit and a president of IA. He said that at least 10% of your income you must invest in yourself on training, because he said you as an internal auditor are it's like you're like a product, you're like a legal entity, a product, right? Now if I was having a product out there and the product needed to sell and I needed to market that product and the product needed to grow and transform and R&D into that product, the company would be spending 20% of its profits into, or the income for that matter, into R&D and product development and diversity. He says you are the product in the realm of internal audit. Each one of us is a product in a marketable, sellable product in internal audit, right? The more invested, the more evolved, the more dynamic product will of course command a higher premium in the marketplace. So by the same business logic, which we would advise our stakeholders to say, invest in your, invest in your top selling products, etc. There is an expectation that we as auditors invest at least 10% of our income on ourselves, so that we then increase our value that much more, right? So in that, so he said, of course, he talked about salary. I would say today, with so much free resource available, the resource you need to spend on yourself is time, not so much money, because it's free. It's so much out there, but you need to invest, X percentage of your available time on self learning, continuous learning. It is inevitable. So there are then some other parts, right? What are the biggest pitfalls of any data analytics endeavor is the entire part on process, right? What should we do? How do you scale so that you don't do too much too soon? How do you ensure that everybody is agreeable to get onto this analytics journey? What are the measurements for success on this project? How will you govern change management? How do you ensure everybody, all the stakeholders invested in this project, have the same expectation? Now, none of these have anything to do with technical capability on analytics itself, right? These are capable, organized auditors are more than capable of handling this part of it. So if you were to put yourself forward saying, let me take part in that part, at least I'm not a completely technical person yet, but I can certainly handle the entire project management of the analytics project. These are all extremely valuable skills when it comes to developing your career in internal audit. So I would say this is another low hang from a personal development perspective. These are low hanging fruits which you can spend easily, volunteer yourselves for, and get involved quickly, because these are skills that will extremely support your overall growth in the profession. Then comes the issue of technology, right? There's so many tools out there. There's so many scalabilities. The cost dimensions are very different. Integratable, whether they can be integrated with your company or not. Whether it's on the cloud, on prem, what training is available. So there's a lot out there that is very diverse. Now, what role can you play as internal auditors in this? Is like I said, download and start going through some of these, your points of view. If some, say your managers or your senior people were going through a decision making process, and you could say, I volunteer an opinion, I have tried this on my own, and I believe this is better than that. Believe me, your point of view and your perspective would be so valuable, because you are the guys who are going to be using the tool that eventually gets brought in. And so these don't require you to be technically capable, right? There's enough material out there. There's a lot. These are the challenges we are facing, so I'm just giving you tips on how you can spearhead your involvement in some of these. And then, of course, the last thing is data itself, right? Now, there are two parts here. Data availability, I think, is probably the biggest challenge, because many companies are still evolving from manual processes to electronic processes, and many are evolving from electronic simple to electronic complex, right? Which means that they had not thought about capturing a lot of things that they should have captured when they started out on their process transformation to make a process electronic, right? So today, when I want to look for insights, I realize, oh, we didn't capture that particular data point, so therefore we can't really look for that particular pattern. I have ABC data, but I actually need 3 more data sets for me to really find a pattern of a trend, or a pattern of abuse, or whatever the case may be. The data itself is not available. As auditors, if you are thinking along the analytics journey, you will, believe me, your first recommendation in your audit report would be, start capturing this data, right? I very often don't see that coming through, but that's an extremely important recommendation to give the company. If they start now in 2020, believe me, in 2021 and 2022, they will be having enough data to start running an analytics dimension on that particular process. So are you recommending capturing of data with the data analytics hat on, so that with foresight that in a year's time, this data will become extremely valuable? So that's one very important aspect, right? The other thing is, I think we are all still struggling on this dimension between privacy and security and accessibility, because quite frankly, with GDPR and all these other things coming into play, there's still a bit of confusion as to what the auditor's rights to data is. I think every company with their legal and DPO team need to figure it out, but that becomes a real challenge, right? So here I am, ripe and ready to run analytics, and then the DPO officer says, sorry, that you can't get that data. But I'm like, I need the data to get the real pattern out. So there's a lot of time at the moment, and unfortunately I think we have to allow that time of maturity to take place, is in negotiating what is the right data, what is the right amount of data to give. So I will just quickly move on to a very elementary simple approach I would like to suggest that you all think about your analytics journey. The first, and I also have given some, this is purely my judgment, right, as to where I think the real complexity and effort needs to go. Scoping and planning is extremely important. I think 30% of your time, effort needs to go there. And I call this out because I also want to highlight the fact that a good analytical thinker with enough business acumen can play a huge part in this important phase of scoping and planning, right? So this last part on conceptualize and hypothesize is the hardest part of any data analytics journey, is to what is it I want to analyze, right? That is the most difficult part. So that doesn't require you to be some SQL or Python expert. You just need to know the business need of the hour and the process underlying it, right? We have tried in the past to bring in technical experts, and they can't succeed because they don't know the process. The person who, it's easier to make a process person into a analytics person. The other way around is very, very difficult. So believe me, you are in the right place with your with your business acumen development stage right now. Read a lot. There's enough and more stories out there about what goes wrong in organizations, what caused it to go wrong, how it could have been prevented. This is the richness that you will need when you start going and making a real play for showing your contribution, right? um, it's too late to start acquiring that business acumen later. And then of course the because I just gave an example, right, about data not being available, there's also a lot of data quality issues, right? So data quality is itself a stage. It is not data analytics yet, it is purely data quality. And there are I've not talked about the tools that are there for this, but there are enough and more tools that will help. You can run your data to see, is it missing certain components, is the logic of this data column not matching with any outliers which are not matching the normal pattern of such data. For example, all dates have a forward stroke, but suddenly there are hyphens. Just the analytics will fail if there are such simple inaccuracies in the data set, right? So there's a lot of pulling data, cleaning data, and unfortunately we're still in a situation where data is stored in tables but nobody knows how to get them out, right? So again, a very important stage is the data obtaining and validating data. Here comes the real analytics. This is where you really want to start crunching the numbers. And again, I would say this is again in this 30%, I would say it's only 50% of the 30% is actually using a tool. The first 50% is using simple self-service capability, even Excel for that matter, to and Excel now, I'll come to it. Excel now is something called Power Query. I don't know if you guys have come across it. If you haven't, please, those of you who use Excel, I'll show you where to find it. Power Query is extremely powerful. It makes it's so easy to analyze a 100 MB file in Power Query, where Excel will 9 out of 10 times hang, right? So there's already, Microsoft already gives us so much capability. The first 50% is using a month or 2 months of data on your own, on your desktop, to try and figure out the pattern, right? It is only after that first stage is over that you need a SQL query or a R or Python or some complex, Tableau or whatever the case may be, to really take it to the next level of sustainable analytics. The first stage of querying, reviewing patterns, looking at false positives, disproving your hypothesis, fine tuning, that doesn't need to happen necessarily in the full data population. It can happen on a few months of data, for which your machine, your Excel file is more than capable of doing. So I today I just want, I'll touch on two, your just in your Microsoft suite, your Excel and your Power BI are two extremely powerful desktop tools that you can start your journey on, and then that will give you enough. Well, once you have started to prove your hypotheses, right? Most companies, with the bit of affordability question mark, will give you the backing to take it to the next stage, because you've proven the value in the initiative, right? So start small with your available tools. And then finally, you've got your observations, you've got some pattern. You now need to tell a story, right? You tell the story and generate action, monitor and close. I'll come to the last part. I'm running out of it. I think slightly running out of time, but I will try and cover all of this, telling you about some of those important relationship and communication skills you need to be able to tell the story effectively. And then this cycle repeats, right? So there's that. So here, coming to a quick overview of tools and resources. I use Microsoft Excel Power Query. I use it regularly. My entire team uses it regularly. We use it to prove the hypotheses first on our desktop. We don't need to get our IT guys involved. Where we are really using them a lot is on the obtain and validate stage. We use IT a lot to help us pull the data, because we don't know how to query the corporate databases, right? But once we get the data, we use Power Query on the desktop. We use Power BI here as well to basically prove the hypotheses. So that is one very important element. The other element is a lot of those of you who already use these ERP tools. There's a lot of integrated query tools already available. I just think, I don't know if all of us know the richness capable that is available in all of our own ERP systems, right? So that's another important element. Then those if you want to, if you're capable of doing server based SQL query, nothing like it. I think that's an extremely important skill. This is what we use our IT guys to do. For example, we do it here and we give it to them and they do it here, and once the output is done here, it passes to Power BI for a sustainable analytical dashboard. So what we do, I'll just give you quickly example. We do it in Power Query and we show in Power BI. Then we pass it to IT guys and they do it in SQL and pass it back to a centralized Power BI, where we can now continue to use it. It's a self-updating analytical table, right? Or a dashboard. So that's the journey we have been on, right? And there are, of course, many companies that have audit specific analytical software as well. All of these, if you Google, A, have trial softwares available, and B, have a lot of learning content, right? Which you can self study, and really, even if you put on your CV certified, completed the idea training course online. It will still give me as a recruiter an interest to see, oh, interesting, this person's taken some initiative to do something. So you don't have, just because you haven't got it done to some proper college and certified, whatever you do is going to add value. And then finally, there are, if you just Google top 10 RPA tools, these 5 come up. Most of these are, available here in India. People are using it regularly. All of them have their own kind of academy type setup, where there's a lot of training already available with webinars and courses that they're giving you to make you competent. If you see here Alteryx, I don't know whether you can see Alteryx down here. Alteryx is a self-service analytical tool. Interestingly, because of the COVID-19 situation, I just thought I'll mention it. Alteryx has teamed up teamed up with an online university. I think it's Udemy or Udacity, one of those things. And they have got a program for people who have lost their jobs on account of COVID-19 to retrain them on all tricks to make them competent for the workforce when their COVID-19 is over. I think that's an extremely lovely gesture. It's not so it's not, there's no cost to it, but if you have to meet the criteria that you are out of work because of the COVID-19 situation, there's a program called Adapt. The Adapt program is basically a combination between Alteryx and Udacity to retrain people for the workforce. I think that's extremely good, and so like that, there's enough and more training available for you on this. And my next one is, which I find the most interesting. So I'm a curious learner, so I like to keep googling and learning, and I just thought I'll help you. If you've already got it, then my apologies, but if not, I think you will find this very helpful. All of these four, and this is just a tip of the iceberg of the online service providers who do pre-programmed online training on all the topics I've talked about, right? You go to any of these four and much more. This is just an example. I'm not getting paid by them to promote them. I just thought they were the top names to think about. Have for 1,200 rupees, 1,500 rupees, 700 rupees, they have programs that you can complete and get certified on as well, to say I've completed 7-day Power BI training and with certification from Udemy, right? It's all available, and believe me, today companies are so organizations like Infosys and the likes are signing up with these service providers to train their people, which means if you put a Udemy certification on your CV, it is as good as coming into a company and getting certified, right? So I encourage you to spend the time. This is the investment I'm talking about. Spend the time to take this up. That's one. This is of course paid investment. Then there are many free trials and free training by the tools I spoke about in this page. Every one of them, I went and found some free trial or free training available. YouTube is endless in its source of training for you. And I found these, and then of course there's webinars like one Simandhar is organizing today. IIA, the ACCA, ICAI have lots of training. In fact, at 4 o'clock today, there is another training by a gentleman from the Tata Group from 4 to 5 on advanced data analytics, right? So there's so much every day, every weekend. There's some webinar. Either it's 200 rupees or it's free or it's 500 rupees, all affordable. But what I want to I just found this website recently. In fact, I'm almost grateful sometimes for such webinar opportunities, because I do my research and I discover new things. And I wanted to bring this point. There's a website called brighttalk.com, which is free. You just have to sign up and create an account. It is just rich with recorded webinars on various topics. For example, Blue Prism, right? Blue Prism here is one of the top 5 RPA tools in the world. Blue Prism has got just countless number of webinars on how to use Blue Prism on BrightTalk, right? So you log into BrightTalk, it's free, and you just search RPA, and it's endless videos, hours and hours of recorded webinars on how on RPA, and with slides. You can download the slides, you can watch the video. I just think, just this itself will take you months to cover. That's that much content out there. But lastly, there's no substitute for experience. So my strongest recommendation is pick. I in fact, in the next 2 slides, I'm giving you some links to content which you can just download and try for yourself, right? Start small and experiment. I can't emphasize that enough. So just moving on, I spoke about Power Query here, right? Power Query and Power BI. I just wanted you to see, right? Those of you who have not used Power Query yet, I'm just showing you where it is. If you have, wonderful. Go into your Excel. This is O365. I think it's in Excel 2016 and above. Go to Data, go to Queries, go to Launch Power Query Editor, right? And then you get a completely different screen. And I'm just giving, and then you have to explore, of course. You have to figure out and explore yourself. But this is the kind of queries that you can write on your own in Power Query, right? So this is a very simple a simple query that somebody has written about delivery status. So they've basically said, if delivery date is either is not blank, or order type is in-store pickup, then call the order as completed, else call it blank, right? It's a simple, right? So if delivery date is bigger or smaller than null, which is 0, or the order type is in-store pickup, then give the result of completed, else give the blank result. So this is how US auditors can take the full data set, find some pattern, and start writing. These are called DAX queries, right? Start writing these queries in Power Query. There's no cost to it. You all have Excel, I'm sure. So this is just an example of how easy it is to get into analytics. And this is just one example of the hundreds of websites out there that give you free training on Power Query. So this is myonlinetraininghub.com, Power Query training on if statement, right? You go in there, all the content is downloadable. You can go and follow the tutorial and figure out how to write an if query statement in Power Query. The other example is, of course, Power BI visualization. So now after you kind of do your query and everything, and you've got some data and you want to start interacting with your data, right? Unfortunately, I actually downloaded, so starting first, this dashboard and many other dashboards, including the underlying data and the visualization, is downloadable from Microsoft for free, just for you to try and feel what Power BI looks like, right? So here's the link to download the Power BI dashboards. I don't know if your company gives you Power BI, wonderful. Else, I'm not 100% sure how to get a trial version or something of it. You probably can just download it from Microsoft. But once you open the this link, I unfortunately can't open it and show you right now because I had done it all set up in my office laptop, and then due to some security issues, I could not join Zoom from that laptop, and therefore I could not. I've basically joined this thing from my personal laptop and don't have the Power BI version to show you. But this particular dashboard, once you download, is actually dynamic. You can click on mail and see all this data changing, right? So for example, new hire mail, you can see the for example, the demographic changes of the male population versus the female population. All of this can be done dynamically on Power BI with the sample files that have been provided. And there's enough and more training. I, for example, did some Power BI training on Udemy. I think I paid 1,100 rupees. It was like a 7 or 8 hour training with all the files, the videos, everything. Some trainer from Europe, highest rated. You get to really, by the end of that, you really are comfortable enough to do your own Power Query and visualization of Power BI. You don't need anything else. And I'll just to emphasize how easy it is. Maybe 2 weeks ago, one of my team members did her trial and she came up with some dashboards. So we did a webinar and showed every other team member her results. And within a week, other team members came up with their dashboard. So they then showed their dashboard, and next week another team member is showing hers. So within a matter of 1 month, because somebody took the initiative to start and learn it and showed how they did it, all other team members have started to do it a lot more confidently, and have been able to find really interesting patterns in the data that they would otherwise have been doing it on Excel. So I'm just going to end this section. Unfortunately, I am really running out of time. So I just wanted to leave you with a very interesting statement. This is an article, again, the link is here in Forbes, about the fourth industrial revolution and how it will affect you. And you can please read it in your own time. But I found two very interesting statements in this article. And I thought I'll just read it out to you, right? Rather than succumb to the doomsday predictions that robots will take over all the jobs, a more optimistic outlook is one where humans get the opportunity to do work that demands their creativity, imagination, social and emotional intelligence, and passion. I think this is the most optimistic statement we can cling on to as we go through this evolution of the future of audit and our profession. And then the next statement, in the almost immediate next paragraph, it says, individuals will need to act and engage in lifelong learning. So they are adaptable when the changes happen. The lifespan for any given skill set is shrinking, so it will be imperative for individuals to continue to invest in acquiring new skills. The shift to lifelong learning needs to happen now because the changes are already happening. So I hope the last few slides have imbibed in you the need for you to do this thing called lifelong learning, and the need for you to really start developing, consciously developing your softer elements, which is the things the machine can't do, the creative element, the imagination, the social element, and all of these things, right? These are the two takeaways I want you to take from today. Start your lifelong learning journey and start finding as many opportunities to increase your softer elements, your people skills. The difference between where we are and where we want to be is created by the changes we are willing to make in our lives. When you want something you've never had, you must do something you've never done before to get it, right? That's a really I really cherish this statement, because every time we try something new and fail, it is just part of our growth journey. So I'm going to quickly move on to this. I take five more minutes, I hope, to give you some time for questions after this. We've talked about this thing of data analytics and future of audit, etc., right? But I told you that the last stage is around telling the story and really invoking that call to action. So positioning yourself as an influencer is an important element, and I like this cartoon because here you have people constantly talking about opinions and points of view, but a young auditor, right, can come around and say, excuse me for a moment, sir, I actually have data. So your seat at the table can be expedited by all the things I've already said to you in this webinar, by the analytics and the RPA. That will get you the seat at the table, right? Because you now can say, look, sir, I have data. But then is that enough? Because once you've got the seat at the table, the more important element is, should they listen to you? Right? And here comes a very, very important question of, can you be trusted? We as auditors are business partners. We are trusted advisors. We are, partners in the success of the journey. And I really, really like this particular equation, which I think is extremely relevant to the profession of internal audit, which is called the trust equation. And I'll spend 2 minutes on this. And there's a link here to the website and the people who have kind of coined this equation. It's called trustedadvisor.com. I encourage you to visit that site. It has got a trusted advisor questionnaire, or like an assessment. You can complete the assessment online. It will give you a report on your trust equation. How trustworthy are you, right? Based on a series of questions, it will give you a score as to how trustworthy you are. So I strongly encourage you to go and do this, and I'll just take 2 minutes on this, right? So if you see this equation, it says basically your trustworthiness is equivalent of your credibility plus your reliability plus your intimacy divided by your self-orientation. Now, let me explain what this is. Your credibility is how good you are at what you do, right? So your how good you are, your technical capabilities, all of those things, how much education you have, how well you have trained yourself technically, etc. That's your credibility. Do you know your job? Are you good at your technical core skill? Credibility. Reliability. Can I rely on you? Will you do what you said you would do, or will you do something else? Will you tell me when you can't do what you said you would do? Right? So this is all about expectation management. It's all about fulfilling the actions you have committed to as an auditor. If you say, I will do this part, you do this part, and then later you should not point the finger and say, it's your process, you should have done it, it's not my job. It's about reliability. Right now, there's I think 70,000 people were surveyed to get data to prove this equation, and the highest scoring criteria for trust was in fact reliability. One of the highest scoring. Your credibility was the lowest scoring criteria. So how good you are at what you do was the lowest scoring criteria, and the highest scoring criteria was how reliable you are at what you do. But interestingly, the second highest score was around intimacy. And what does intimacy mean? Intimacy means rapport. Rapport means the question mark between your business partner and you is, do I like you, right? It's about, do I like you? Do I feel good in your environment? When I am with you, do I feel good? Do you make me feel good? Do you understand me, right? That's, I know the word intimacy can mean other things, but that's not what it means here. It purely means rapport. Can we relate to each other, right? Do I like your company? Uh, do you understand what I'm saying? And can I understand what you were saying? Do you have my best interest at heart? All of that comes under intimacy. And then so interestingly, right, in rapport and communication, this is where communication comes extremely critical. Rapport and communication can be taught, right? So here is a equation. You can learn technical stuff, you can learn to be organized and responsible and be to manage stakeholder expectations. You can learn that. You can even learn how to communicate better. You can learn how to build rapport, right? And then one, if say you mastered all three of those, what reduces trust significantly is if the person, your other party, right, your process owner, your stakeholder, believes that you are doing all this because you want to look good in front of your boss or in front of the audit committee. It's about self orientation. Basically, the higher your self purpose is in the relationship with your process owner. So I go to a process owner with an observation, and I want to nail this observation because I want to take the credit for finding this gap, right? The moment they sense that you are coming to me not with the intention of helping me fix my process, being my partner, helping me in the journey to transform the accounts payable process or whatever the case may be, you're coming here because you want to take credit for finding a gap in my process, and you want to go and tell your boss that you found it. That moment your trust goes down, right? So here is where I'm trying to just emphasize, even though you've done all the hard work of analytics and come up with, and you said here I have data, it could all go wrong if you don't get the communication part right. Okay, I hope that makes sense to all of you. So extremely important that you come out of your conversation with your process owner with a win-win outcome. It's about a we outcome, not an I outcome, right? So credibility is the lowest importance, reliability is the highest, scoring next to it is intimacy, and the destroyer of trust is self-orientation. What is interesting though in this equation is it's telling us that trust can be taught, trust can be learned, right? While you have to earn trust, that is after applying all the different trust components, as an individual, you are actually being told that all the ingredients required to build trust can be learned or taught, and that's a very, very important element. And I like I said, I'm going to move on, but please do read that article. It's very interesting. I'll take another 2 minutes on another very important illustration. There was the lady who is a lady called Judith Glaser, who I was fortunate enough to learn under this particular concept of conversational intelligence. Unfortunately, she died last year from cancer, but her legacy lives on, and her husband has created an academy called the Conversational Academy. And this is a very, very interesting theory that she's come up with, and I think it's extremely important that auditors relate to this theory, because we are often on the low trust end when we with our process owners because of the nature of our work, right? Often when we go to a process owner with an observation, they become resistant. They, if you can see this thing here, resistor, they're very skeptical. What are you going to do? Are you going to catch me out? What is your agenda here, right? So you as an auditor, right, need to have an opportunity to transform them from this I feeling of you versus me to we, right? Now it's not that easy, but Judith has tried to come up with the steps you could follow to go from I to we. And I'll just take a few minutes to tell you what these steps are. And I like I said, I'm happy perhaps to come again another time to talk a bit more about these, but these are deep topics that take a lot more time. So I don't think I can do justice to the amount of research that has been done here, but I'll try my best. So it starts with going into a meeting to say, let down your guard and tell them perhaps, you should rather than saying, I've done this research analytics and I found that your process has got these many gaps, right? The moment you do that, the resistor, human nature, right? The resistor guard goes up. Whereas if you go into a meeting and say, I'm trying to analyze this concept of PR approval and whether the criteria is being met, and I've tried this particular pattern of analysis, could you guide me whether I've done the right thing? Right? And you've made them feel more powerful and said, I tried something, I'm not quite sure, I need your help to succeed. You have dismissed their trust of, you are here to catch me, right? And this resistor signal will not go up. So first is transparency. Transparency, of course, if you're intending to catch them out, then I can't, that's a different question. But if you're intending to get to we, then start by really lowering your guard and being vulnerable and tell them what you don't know, what you need help with. So that's the first part. Then you come to listen to connect, right? This is where you try and find some similar, this is where you build rapport. It doesn't have to be this doesn't have to be an office topic, it could be anything. Find something in common. This is where you build the likability, right? This is where you try and deal with this intimacy question, right? You first, people listen to you. There's a theory that people like people who are like them, right? So the people tend to inadvertently gather towards people who are similar to them in style and nature. So when people listen to build relationships, they're listening to find commonality, right? So listen to connect. Then the third very important aspect is listen to understand. Now often auditors are listening to give that response. They're listening to rebut, listening to counter. But this is not the idea here. Here it's about listening to understand. The guy, you ask the guy a question, he is trying to explain, not try and find gaps in his explanation, but try and genuinely listen to see what is he trying to say, and empathize and understand, right? That people, you can't pretend to empathize. You genuinely need to empathize and understand. Because when you do, what happens is this is where he's telling you his difficulties. You started by telling your difficulties. This is where he's telling you his difficulties or their difficulties. You need to be, this is where he believes, okay, this person isn't out to get me. He actually understands me and he's going to help me, which will then lead you towards the next stage where, because you heard their pain, they heard your pain, you are now able to come up with strategies so that you both succeed, right? This is where you co-create for shared success. Okay, if I will do these things and I will pass them to you, and if you can do these things and share it with me first before you tell your boss, it will really help me. Shared success, right? And then once you kind of agree the strategy, reconfirm, test all all the assumptions that you had come in the back of your mind, all the things that you have agreed to undertake. Make sure that this is where your reliability is very important, right? Say what you are going to do, tell them what you think they are going to do, close any reality gaps in understanding. And if you repeat this is another repeatable, a learnable process of how to build trust. This is another very important element towards your trust factor or your ability to be seen as a trusted advisor.
Yeah, Sriram Mahadevan, you can put forward your question, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for sharing this slide. I mean, it's very much useful for my insights. Now, my question is, I have two clarifications. My first query is regarding with the Power Query. See, I'm using an Excel version of 2016 in my laptop. In my office, they're using 2016 or earlier versions. So when I synchronize my data, what I've analyzed in my laptop, I'm trying to transfer data to the office desktop. I feel this discrepancies, like I'm unable to get the exact result what I had intended in my laptop. So this is being a hindrance for me to share the data and analysis and interpret it. How do I overcome this, first of all?
So from my basic research, this Power Query only comes in 2016 latest version and later, right? So unfortunately, if you're opening it in your office, see, there are only two ways. Either you do your analysis in your office, your personal laptop, download, extract the output into Excel, which you can do, right? Export to Excel, and take the outputs to the office for your further purposes, if that is the case, right? But if you want to continue to do analysis in Power Query, I don't think earlier versions of 2016 and prior to that is supported. That is my understanding. Yeah. So what I often sometimes do is I work, say, sometimes I work between different, not, I say we don't take work to personal laptops, it's a different question. But if you, between different laptops in the office, which have different versions of it, right? If you export it to an Excel, right? You can get a very clean Excel, which only has your results of your analytics, right? And that is good enough for your next stage of report writing or talking to your stakeholders or whatever. Or the other very important element, you'd have to tell your company to give you the later license, unfortunately.
The issue here is like when I'm using my personal laptop, which had an updated version, I don't have to type any Visual Basics or DAX. But when I'm in office and using the office desktop, I face this issue. So do I need to learn like how I learn RPAs? I need to learn Visual Basic as well, or DAX, data analysis.
So I don't know why BB comes into this, but DAX I would strongly recommend that you do if you are on exploring further with the, not everything. So you're basically saying you're using the conditional querying in your other laptop, is it? Is that what you're using?
I mainly use Power Pivot and Power Queries. These are the two main functions I use often for audit works.
No, but do you write your queries from scratch, or do you use conditional query? Because in Power Query you have conditional query, which is just filling up the boxes, right? You select the field and you put the boxes, or you write the statements from scratch.
No, write the statement from scratch, because that is no upgraded version in my desktop. That's a problem in the office.
I agree. So my point is that I would strongly suggest that you learn to write statements from scratch anyway, because whatever in the later versions of Excel that they have the standard, like, the self-service query, right? Where you just drop the box and there's all the operators is a drop down. That has limitations in what you can analyze, right? There's only so many combinations you can do. Whereas if you write from scratch, you have a lot more capability that you can experiment, right? If you go into the library of Power Query formulas, what is available in the self-service element is very, very small compared to all the things that Power Query can handle if you can write formulas. So I would still recommend, aside from the fact that you perhaps need to upgrade anyway, I would still say that learning the DAX queries is a strong investment on your part for yourself.
Sure. Okay. And my second query is regarding is there renewals required often for my personal laptop? Let's say for my easy analysis interpretations, rather than relying on my office desktop to analyze data. Do I need to renew it often? DAX or Power Queries and Power Pivots. I'm using 2016 post-date versions. So is it recommended to renew it? Something like that is there for it?
See, the point is Microsoft keeps coming up with later versions, later capabilities, later tools, right? So this is so now we're already in O365, and that's a question you have to answer, because I can't comment on whether the features in the latest version are similar or better, or to the version that you have. My simple recommendation is the latest versions are always going to be better, right? So from that perspective, I suggest you look at upgrading, certainly, but that doesn't mean you can't do what you need to do with the older version. You just may not get access to all the latest features.
Okay, thank you so much for your query. Thank you so much.
Technology is changing so fast and disrupting the industry faster than ever, which in turn making our skill sets deflate or depreciate. So how do we cope with the technological changes as a professional and stay relevant in the industry?
Okay, so like I said, this thing of lifelong, the two skills. Okay, your analytical thinking skills will not get depleted, right? So, and that makes up, I would say, 60% of a 60% minimum of an internal auditor is their capability to think and analyze patterns and come up with hypotheses and theories, right? That won't get depleted because of advancement. Now, the 40% or so that where you are, this is where your lifelong learning investment is essential. Unfortunately, the industry will evolve and faster than ever before, which means that tools that are in the marketplace are evolving even faster. But as internal auditors, we are not the first users of the latest technology, right? We don't need to be either. So my suggestion is that, lifelong learning is certainly important. And unless the company, and many of the things that we have today will be relevant even 2 years from now, perhaps not the latest version, etc., like we just had a conversation just now. But if the company is driving a different tool, of course you have to learn it, right? And you have to dedicate X number of hours for learning, and you have to basically decide which what will your 2 or 3 hours that you're spending go with, whether you want to increase your critical thinking, you want to increase your communication, or you want to increase your technological skills. For me, it's all investment in yourself. And I think your relevance, you can still maintain relevance in spite of this evolution, as long as you're not completely out of date with what is being required of the company. That's my take. I think if you're trying to catch up with everything, we will become robots ourselves and no longer be thinking people, right? So unless the company absolutely says this is what you need to be doing, then I think otherwise it's a mixture that you need to sustain, really.
Ma'am, our second question is, are data science, data analytics used interchangeably, or is data analytics the answer for data science?
Okay, so data analytics is a very, I would say, a very elementary, a very elementary aspect of data science, right? Data science is a far, far larger discipline, okay? Because data science covers everything from data sourcing, data, the data hygiene, data, unstructured data, structured data, and goes on, neural networks, natural language programming, all of that's data science, right? It's a far, far big discipline. Data analytics, on the other hand, is a very, I would say, an elementary skill, elementary in the sense, if you compare to the world of data science, about analyzing patterns, right? All it is analyzing patterns. While people use the word interchangeably, data analytics to me is quite elementary in terms of looking for patterns and looking for insights. And you can go, as you go towards predictive analytics, the word analytics may exist, but that's where your far more advanced capabilities of AI and neural networks and other things come into play. Data analytics at its fundamental stage is looking for patterns. So I think if I were to answer it, data analytics is a subset of data science.
Do you do the audit of RPA configuration, as you depend a lot for your audit and generation of exception reports?
Yes, we do. So to the extent we are able to, we do. Either you review configuration, or you basically have to do a hypothesis. So you basically look at input-output controls, right? So either you do configuration review, which requires technical skills on the code that the RPA is written in, or you do input-output controls, which basically tests whether the machine is producing the output you would otherwise have expected it to produce, right? So at an elementary level, if it's a very complicated RPA and auditors don't always have the skill, then I would say the in-between assurance technique would be to look at input-output and see whether it's behaving in the same way. If you certainly have the skill set to read the code, then I would say code review is better.
Even if we don't have practical experience in the various tools, be it auditing tools, visualization tools, etc., just doing a course on Udemy or other such websites, will it add skills for the purpose of searching jobs or adding into the CV?
So I think personally, if you can do the training on any of these and show it in your CV, it will certainly help you with making the first cut of selection for job interviews. And I think if you were genuine in your attempt to learn, then once you get into the workplace and get access to the data sets that you perhaps have not been able to get access to without that role, you will, once you get access, you will be the fastest to show productivity and output, which then just kind of expedites your career. So I can't see the investment through these learnings as a downside to it. It's only an upside or a bigger upside, if that makes sense.
We have a next question. Someone from commerce background who likes audit as subject and has keen interest, but when industry requires CA qualified for such roles, how can a non-qualified make its footing or enter the field of internal or risk audit as industry seeks practical experiences?
Okay, so if you are many dimensions there. Many companies don't necessarily look for CAs. Okay, I'll start with that. Many companies are not looking for CAs. Many companies are, in fact, very happy to start with BComs and MBAs because they want to invest in that person. So if if CA certainly may command a slightly bigger price, but then the company rather hire at BCom and train you so that you become the kind of person that they want. So I don't think not being a CA, not being a CA is not a barrier. But certainly, you have alternative qualifications such as CIA that you should consider, because the CIA, if you are keen on learning, so there are two parts. The CIA will certainly help you showcase that you are keen on the profession. There are many people who have taken up the qualification while in a business role, just so that they are ready to make the transition when the time comes to it. But I will say one thing though, when you are making a transition in a role, right, say from a non-auditor role and to an auditor role, the expectation to command the price. Say you have been working for 5 years and your colleague in audit has worked for 5 years, and you want to make a transition to the role. To expect to command the same salary that an auditor has, who's 5 years experience to get, may be a little difficult for the companies who are willing to make an investment, right? So that maybe you may need to be willing to take some cut to make a transition for some companies. In some cases, if you can showcase that your business acumen, say I'm just talking about people who are transitioning, right? If you can demonstrate that your business acumen from doing some business role is so high, and that you have self-learning interest and you have done some courses on your own, and you are able to talk about often people fail at the first question, right? You have been undertaking a particular process for a long time, and we ask what are the 3 or 4 top risks in the process you have been doing, right? And say you are now trying to transition to audit. If you're unable to answer that with absolute confidence like an expert, right, it only means that that person hasn't really absorb that process that they've been doing, and therefore will not bring much learning to the auditor role. So there are many pieces at play, right? I don't think CA at all has, I mean, at least not from, as a recruiter for Infosys and for other companies as well, as as an advisor, I don't think that's a deal breaker at all. But I think if you're looking to keep the same salary, if you're transitioning, it may be a little bit difficult. And if you're unable to illustrate what you learned doing, say, a business role or some other role, right? Say you have done some software implementation role and you have transitioning to audit, and you can't illustrate the business challenges or something like that, then it's a different issue. It's a business acumen issue and not so much a technology or a qualification issue.
The focus of your presentation is internal audit function, but do we need these tech skills for running a CPA practice?
If you're running a CPA practice, okay, I'm not the best person to comment on it, as I don't, I'm not practicing CPA. But I would say, to the extent that if you want to win your customers over by showcasing your financial results in a more dynamic way, many people are now moving towards Power BI and visualization for showcasing financial outputs and looking at financial patterns and all of those things, right? CPA practice is extremely critical to really give insights to your client, right? Just like we give internal audit insights, financial insights, patterns, and decision-making data is needed. And I think these skills go really enrich somebody's capability to give insights, whichever the form is, right? So I think if I were to really put my words in it, I would say that yes, it would help.
So I think even I can add something to Bhavani because Meeta have asked that question. So Meeta, the new content of 2022 CPA is already having what all I think today Bhavani have discussed. The entire curriculum of most of the accounting qualifications is switching over to technology. I think US CMA also have technology content in it, and CPA also from 2022 will have all this. I think data analytics is already covered in audit in CPA from this year only, from the December months, and we will see more of the tech things covering up in the new CPA licensing model.
Ma'am, we had a question from Rishabh, like he asked previously, what impact will technology have on the independence of auditors? So, ma'am, in regard to independence of auditors, he meant, will it limit the scope of auditors considering the fact that they will take some time to get themselves updated in technological front?
Okay, but okay, so maybe I don't, I hear the question. So independence for me is whether or not you are reporting within a structure, right? A reporting structure which basically is to the function that you audit, right? So for as long as the two very important words, right? Independence and objectivity, right? So independence is impeded if you are reporting to the function you are auditing, right? Which I don't think technology, being not being able to advance with technology will impede that, because to the extent that you report within an audit function, you are necessarily independent, and so your independence will not be affected. And as long as you are forthcoming on what is it that you are able to assure on and what you can't assure on, because you are still catching up with technology, you have to operate with a limitation of scope, or just give comfort on the scopes you can audit, right? And be very clear what you can audit, rather than trying to over assure on something you can't assure. Then the other element is objectivity, right? This also goes very hand in hand, very much hand in hand, in being able to explain to the stakeholder that while you may be seeking their help to understand the technology that you're auditing, while you may be seeking their help to improve your own skills, when it comes to forming an opinion and giving it, you that at the end of the day, you have to, as this is where it comes down to ethics, you have to consciously remain objective while maintaining the relationship and all those other important elements which I talked about, trusted advisor. Because if people understood what the job of an auditor is, they would understand the need for you to perhaps still raise an observation, even though that stakeholder was your absolutely supportive in your learning journey, the learning the learning the technology that they are using, etc. They would respect your need to be objective and report accordingly if you made them understand the difference, right? So I think both objectivity and independence can be maintained as you are going through the technological journey of getting upskilled to what the company is using.
Ma'am, we are done with the questions.
Okay, guys, I guess I would like to thank you. I had one more element which I couldn't cover, but I'll share the slides so you can perhaps look at it. Maybe some other time we can talk about communication styles, because that's a very important element for auditors. But maybe Shipal, we can talk about if that may be relevant for some other time. This is a tip of the iceberg. Okay, there's an ocean, a huge ocean of research behind communication styles, but often we don't get taught this. Unfortunately, none of the syllabus, no CPA or your ICAI or ISACA or CI, no, nobody really teaches you these things, right? And this is where I would again encourage a lot more self-learning on this softer side, which is extremely important. And I'll tell you why it's important, right? Our brain, this is a research of one company, but there are, if you Google communication styles and you will find hundreds and thousands of pages of research. But I've only taken out the research of one company, which is basically Herman Brain. Herman Brain, HB, it's the, and HBDI. Unfortunately, you can see the link there, right? Whole brain thinking. So what does it say? It says basically you can divide a person's thinking and communication styles into four parts, right? There is an analytical thinker, there is a structural thinker, a relational thinker, and an experimental thinker. And these are the kinds of people you work with every day, right? And you are one of these thinkers as well, right? I am one of these thinkers. And the way it works, the way you read this chart is, right, there's an abstract mode, a rational mode, a concrete mode, and an intuitive mode. What's a rational mode? A rational mode is somebody who is applying logic. It's very much logic based. They very much need some structure, and they want to, and everything is about data and facts and so on. So an analytical thinker, for example, and the analytical thinker is also a little bit blue sky. He said, what are the potential? It's a bit more abstract also. He's looking for logic with some kind of blue sky thinking. So these are people who are logical and facts-based. They prefer working with numbers, statistics, and data, and need to gather facts before making it. So if one of your process owners or the guy receiving an audit report or a stakeholder is an analytical thinker, you need to get to the point and get to it fast. Because if you start diverting, of course, giving the whole history of something, they'll lose interest quickly, right? So this is where your elevator pitch punchline needs to say, guys, I found this discrepancy. I'm happy to explain the process with which I took to get there, but this is the facts behind this discrepancy. He doesn't need, some auditors will go into a meeting saying, I did this, I took this dump, then I analyzed this, then I filtered this, then I did that. They're not interested. These guys are not interested. Okay, so day one, get to the facts, show me the facts. I'm okay. You can, and if I need to, you come back to you to the process, I'll come back to you on the process. So if you start going the other way around, you will lose this guy. He will not believe this guy gets me, right? So that's the second. The second mode is this practical thinker, right? Structural, okay, structural or practical thinkers. These guys are stickler for process and, show me the methodology, show me what you did, show me how you did it, etc., before they can even trust your output. So practical thinkers are highly organized and value detailed plans and procedures. So when you communicate with them, be organized as they are. Present every information step by step. Make sure you cross out the finer details and back up everything that you are making. Share it with them in advance in writing so they can read it before they come, so they can process the new information, right? So if you go to this guy and you say, here, I found a gap in the process and this is the facts behind the gap, he's like, wait, backtrack. Tell me how you did it, what you did. Take me what report you downloaded, how did you do it, what did you, and so on, so forth. And so that is the other key element, to understand that this kind of thinker need to receive information from you, the same auditor, differently, right? Now you have the third thinker. Now here you have concrete. These are grounded people who use their gut. So these are very grounded, very realistic people, but they use their gut a lot more. Gut means they use their softer skills, their intuition a bit more. So relational thinkers are more emotional and base their decisions on their feelings. They are better at picking up on non-verbal cues, recognizing interpersonal difficulties. If there's something on your facial expression, they will say, he's not telling me the truth, there's something there, right? And considering the values of everyone in the group, they want to maintain harmony. There's some other models around this, call it harmonizers. These people are the people who want to maintain harmony. They want to give you room for your feelings. They want to use their feelings. So when you communicate with a relational thinker, tell them a story. This is the guy who doesn't like hard facts. Give me the background, but don't give me the process. Tell me who is impacted by this outcome, how many people are impacted, what could this mean for the company, what could this mean for our reputation, and so on and so forth. Give them this is where the consequence, the who are affected. Give them a bit of a story, and do it in a group setting. These guys like to hear other people's views. So a person who often reacts and takes decisions based on his emotion or gut likes to hear from other people. So this guy, if you put him on a one-to-one room and say, okay, take a call, he's like, wait, let's call another meeting, I want to have my team with me, right? So this is another kind of guy. And then the fourth kind of thinker is the experimental thinker. They're more imaginative and enjoy exploring concepts, strategies, and big picture approaches to problem solving. So they are okay to live with a bit of ambiguity, right? So but if you give them too much detail, they give them too much of the process, too much of the people affected, they're like, okay, you're getting too much for me. They are okay for you to be a bit abstract, go with the facts, go a bit more on the logic, but give the potential. What could this mean for the company, and so on and so forth. And then when communicating with this kind of guy, it's okay to get a little creative, give some charts, etc., but always link back to why. You don't need to always give them all the steps you followed, but they are very, very anchored on why. Why should this? Why? What does it mean for us? So I just want you to understand that if you use a different method for the wrong kind of person, you could lose the connection with that stakeholder very quickly. Now, I unfortunately don't have the time now to tell you how to spot these people, right? Because the logical next step will be, okay, you told me how to talk to these kind of thinkers, but how do I spot these thinkers, right? I'll give you a very quick one. Is this kind of guy will be like, why does it matter? So what? Okay, this is the kind of questions he will say, right? This is the kind of guy who keeps saying, okay, what did you do? Or what was the next step, and how did you do, and so on and so forth, right? So if you see a particular stakeholder who constantly talks about process, you should really use the practical thinker approach and hit it right first time, right? This is the kind of guy who keeps saying, who all did you consult? What were the opinions? What was the impact? And so on and so forth. Here, better you bring all the people you consulted into a room and have it, hit home run straight away, right? And then here is the guy who is like, okay, show me the facts, right? Give me the report. I don't care the method. I just get me the extract. I want to see the SAP report. I want to see this report, right? So I hope this gives you a picture, right? That as auditors, the communication styles, coming back to the earlier slide of how important communication is, this is just like the beginning of an ocean of knowledge out there on communication styles, thinking styles, rapport building, conversational intelligence, trust equation. I mean, it's the whole ocean of soft skills which you don't often get to learn in any structured certification program, etc. But I think are extremely important for you to be the next generation of auditors that kind of make it through all this automation journey and everything, and still command premium value at the end, right? Because remember, all the things that you used to do as auditors will now be done by machines, but your value will come when you can take the output of that machine and quickly. So if you go back to my earlier point, right, this last stage here, right, on phase 4, this is where the quicker you can take this and convert it into a communication strategy success, that's where you are really going to hit your sweet spot as an auditor. I think I'll leave you with that. That was my last point. I'm happy to share these slides. You can read up some more and maybe do some other session if you are keen on this. But there's a whole set of knowledge out there around how the softer skills of an internal auditor, which I think are equally important for yourself. And then, of course, I just left, I think the CIA qualification is another thing you would want to explore. I've left you the latest syllabus here. Like Shripal was talking about CPA syllabus, even the IIA syllabus for CIA has changed to focus a lot more on some of these newer skill sets. Data analytics is now one of a key new domain. If you can see the split, it used to be a lot more on business and other things. Now, almost 45% is purely on IT and security for the average internal auditor. This is not an IT auditors program. This is a general internal auditors program, which has got nearly 50% of IT content now. So just to give you an indication where the profession is thinking of the need of the future, right? So this can help you certainly. If you're not a member of the IIA, I strongly recommend that you become a member of the IIA. There's plenty of webinars. Please go to their website, iaindia.org, and sign up. My details are on there if you want to reach out to me. I'm part of the Bangalore chapter of the IIA, and currently the vice president. So I'm happy to take any questions on the IIA as well. And your membership fee will be more than paid off if you attend our national conferences. The conferences discount itself covers your membership fee. So many companies and individuals do take up membership because they intend to attend a two-day conference, and when they do, whatever they paid for membership is actually pays off via the discount for the conferences and other training programs. So I'll leave you with that note. I'm very happy that you've given me your time and allowed me to impart some of my knowledge and wisdom. And happy to connect. I'm on LinkedIn. For those of you who need to find me and connect with me, LinkedIn is probably the best method. Otherwise, you can go through Shripal or Aishwarya or anybody to reach out to me with any further questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bhavani. I think the biggest takeaway for us is because a lot of them have this skill set, but the way they have to communicate with the peers is such an important thing, which was highlighted exactly at the last slide. Because half of them, though they have good skills, but they're not able to communicate it properly, and rather not able to understand the expectations of the stakeholders. And I think this is a big lesson for all the students here. And communication style are so very important. Especially, I was just sharing in the chat there that when we interact with the partners and the CFO, we must understand what is a mindset, which type of thinker they are, and then accordingly present our facts and information to them. So thank you so much, Bhavani. This was one of the, I think, one of the best sessions we had among all the leadership sessions, especially with respect to the skill set. And I think most of them are asking these slides. I guess we'll definitely share that who all have registered. And thank you so much, Bhavani. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, Harsha's question is, I am currently doing CA with articleship in internal audit field. Is it necessary to do CIA to upgrade the career, or doing CA with experience in internal audit field is enough? Will pursuing CIA after doing CA is good enough or not?
Okay, so I would say, Aishwarya, if you're doing articleship in IA and doing the CA qualification, and I know Shipal will say I should encourage you to do CIA, but I won't. I don't think you need to do CIA on top of your CA with articleship experience. Okay, but it has to be proper internal audit articleship. If you're keen on a career in internal audit, then it has to be proper articleship for internal audit focused, right? Because many people do a mixture of various things, and then they come out with a mixed exposure, mixed experience. Whereas some people do purely 3 years of IA, they hit the ground much faster because the training that they get in articleship is very focused on internal audit. So to that extent, I leave it to you to judge that I think the very focused IA articleship is very, very helpful and probably sufficient. That having said, even the CA, the ICAI is now coming up with more qualifications in the space of internal audit and more certification, I think. So that also, I would say, has a lot of deep thinking has gone into the kind of quality that they want to see from internal auditors coming out of the CA professionals. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for such an outstanding presentation, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and sharing your words of knowledge and wisdom with us, ma'am. That means a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Welcome.